Imagine a civilization so advanced, they mapped the cosmos with pinpoint accuracy, tracked time in cycles spanning thousands of years, and built sprawling cities that vanished almost overnight. The ancient Maya left behind a legacy of staggering intellect, particularly in their mastery of timekeeping. Their calendars didn't just mark days, they predicted celestial events with eerie precision, synchronized with planetary movements, and even hinted at cycles of creation and destruction. But here's the chilling question. What if this knowledge wasn't just the work of brilliant astronomers and mathematicians? What if it was guarded and controlled by a secretive brotherhood whose influence stretched far beyond the jungles of Mesoamerica? For centuries, the sudden collapse of the Maya has baffled historians. One day, their cities thrived with bustling markets, towering pyramids, and scholars scribbling astronomical data. The next, they were swallowed by the wilderness, leaving behind silent stone monuments whispering of lost wisdom. But what if their disappearance wasn't just about drought or warfare? What if it was deliberate, a vanishing act orchestrated to protect something far more valuable than gold? Hidden in the cracks of their calendars, encoded in the alignment of their temples, lies evidence of a clandestine group who may have held the keys to time itself. These weren't just priests or rulers, they were keepers of a cosmic secret, a brotherhood whose understanding of time transcended mere measurement and edged into the realm of prophecy. Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on one of history's most tantalizing mysteries. This isn't just a story about numbers carved into stone. It's about power, the kind that doesn't fade with empires. The Maya didn't just track time, they may have wielded it, and the echoes of their knowledge ripple into our modern world in ways you'd never expect. From the shadows of deserted temples to the cryptic symbols that still puzzle archaeologists, we're following the trail of a hidden hand that shaped history. Who were they? What did they know? And most haunting of all, could their legacy still be influencing the world today? Strap in. This journey doesn't just rewrite the past, it might just change how you see time itself. The Maya didn't just observe the stars, they conversed with them. While modern astronomers rely on satellites and supercomputers, the Maya tracked celestial movements with nothing more than carved stone and naked intuition. Their long count calendar, a staggering feat of mathematics, didn't just measure years, it spanned epochs. Imagine a system so precise it could predict planetary alignments centuries in advance, or pinpoint solar eclipses to the day, all without telescopes or written records as we know them. This wasn't mere counting, it was a dialogue with the universe. At the heart of their system lay the long count, a cyclical calendar stretching over 5,000 years. Unlike our linear Gregorian calendar, the Maya saw time as layers of repeating patterns, each cycle carrying its own energy, its own destiny. The end of one cycle didn't just mark a new year, it signaled a transformation, a cosmic rebirth. Scholars still debate how they achieved such accuracy, but the numbers don't lie. Their calculations for the solar year came within minutes of today's atomic clock precision. Even more hauntingly, their calendar didn't just track time. It seemed to anticipate it, embedding prophecies within its intricate glyphs. But here's what most historians overlook: this knowledge wasn't public. The average Maya farmer didn't consult the stars to plant crops. That wisdom was guarded by a select few. Temple inscriptions reveal that only the highest priests and rulers had access to the full scope of these calculations. Hidden chambers beneath pyramids housed sacred texts, and ceremonies aligned with celestial events weren't just rituals. They were acts of synchronization, as if the Brotherhood was tuning the very fabric of time. When Spanish invaders burned their codices, they didn't just destroy books, they erased the operating manual for a technology we're only beginning to comprehend. The chilling truth, the Maya's grasp of time wasn't just about dates, it hinted at a deeper understanding of reality itself. Their calendars didn't merely reflect cycles, they may have influenced them. Modern physicists now toy with the idea that time isn't linear but fluid, a notion the Maya carved in stone 1,000 years ago. Were they simply observers of the cosmic dance, or did they know steps we've forgotten? The answer might lie in the silent stones of Caracol, in the unread glyphs of Palenque waiting for someone to decipher the code. Of all the relics left behind by the Maya, none is more enigmatic or more revealing than the Dresden Codex. This fragile bark paper manuscript, named after the German library where it now resides, is one of only 4 surviving Maya books to escape the fires of Spanish conquest. At first glance, its pages look like an artist's dream, vivid glyphs of gods, serpents, and celestial bodies woven together in a riot of red and black ink. But look closer and you'll realize this isn't just art, it's a mathematical masterpiece. The Codex contains some of the most sophisticated astronomical tables ever discovered from the ancient world. It charts the movements of Venus with staggering precision, predicting its appearances and disappearances over decades. It even accounts for the planet's irregular orbit, a calculation so complex that modern astronomers didn't crack it until the invention of calculus. But here's what's truly unsettling. These tables weren't just observational. They were predictive, mapping celestial events centuries into the future. How could a civilization without telescopes, without even the concept of zero as we know it, achieve such accuracy? The answer may lie in who held the pen. Unlike modern science, which thrives on open collaboration, Maya astronomical knowledge was tightly controlled. The Codex wasn't some public almanac, it was the domain of a select few, a manual for initiates. The glyphs hint at rituals where priests, draped in jade and quetzal feathers, used these tables to commune with the gods. They didn't just study the heavens, they believed they could influence them. Some scholars argue the Dresden Codex was more than a scientific document, it was a tool, a bridge between the earthly and the divine, wielded by a brotherhood who understood time as a force to be shaped, not just observed. But the real mystery isn't just what the Codex contains, it's how it survived. While Spanish bishops burned thousands of Maya texts in the 16th century, labeling them works of the devil, this one slipped through. Was it hidden in a cave, smuggled across the sea, or perhaps given its sacred contents was it protected by design, passed down through generations of keepers who knew its value? The Codex resurfaced in Vienna in the 1700s, its origins shrouded in silence. Even now, its pages guard secrets. Some sections remain untranslated, their glyphs resisting modern decipherment. What else might they be hiding? Here's the chilling thought. If the Dresden Codex is this advanced, what was lost in the fires of Merida? What other knowledge did the Brotherhood take with them when their cities fell? The more we learn, the clearer it becomes the Maya weren't just tracking time. They were mastering it, and somewhere in the gaps between those painted glyphs lies a truth we're only beginning to grasp. Behind the towering pyramids and beneath the intricate carvings of Maya cities operated a class of individuals so revered. They held the keys to the cosmos itself, the priests and scribes. These weren't just religious figures or record keepers, they were the architects of time, the human conduits between the earthly and the celestial. While farmers tilled the soil and warriors defended borders, this elite class spent lifetimes decoding the movements of stars, perfecting calculations, and performing rituals so precise they blurred the line between science and sacrament. Training for this role wasn't a matter of years, it spanned generations. Young initiates, often chosen from noble families, endured decades of grueling education. They memorized the positions of planets, the rhythms of eclipses, and the sacred formulas hidden within glyphs. But their knowledge wasn't just academic. It was experiential, passed down through whispered chants and midnight vigils under the open sky. Imagine a young scribe, fingers stained with ink made from sacred pigments, tracing the path of Venus across a bark paper codex while elders recounted prophecies spoken centuries before. This wasn't just study, it was initiation into a living tradition, one that demanded not just intellect but spiritual alignment. The rituals they performed were anything but symbolic. During a solar eclipse, high priests cloaked in jade beads and quetzal feathers would ascend temple steps aligned with the rising sun. At the exact moment of totality, they'd pierce their tongues with obsidian blades, offering blood to feed the gods and restore the sun's light. To modern eyes, this might seem like superstition, but consider the precision required. These ceremonies were timed down to the minute, synchronized with celestial events predicted years in advance. The priests weren't just praying for divine intervention. They were participating in a cosmic balance, acting as intermediaries who could negotiate with time itself. What set them apart wasn't just their knowledge, it was their exclusivity. The Brotherhood operated under strict hierarchies, with access to certain texts or rituals granted only after tests of loyalty and competence. The famed Popol Vuh, a Maya creation epic, hints at this secrecy. Only the keepers of the mat, a metaphor for sacred knowledge, could interpret the deeper meanings of their calendars. Even among rulers, only those anointed by the priesthood could wield the full authority of time's wisdom. This wasn't just a scholarly elite, it was a closed network, a fraternity bound by oaths and encoded language designed to shield their secrets from outsiders. And then there were the scribes, the unsung engineers of this system. While priests performed rituals, scribes etched the evidence into stone and bark. Their glyphs weren't mere writing, they were multidimensional puzzles blending astronomy, mythology, and mathematics into a single symbol. A single glyph could reference a star's position, a god's wrath, and a historical event simultaneously. Decoding these wasn't just about literacy, it demanded fluency in a visual language that few outside the Brotherhood could fully grasp. When Spanish chroniclers described burning Maya texts as works of the devil, they weren't just destroying books, they were erasing the syntax of an entire worldview. The lingering question isn't just how they achieved such sophistication, it's why they guarded it so fiercely. Some scholars argue this secrecy was pragmatic. In a world where knowledge was power, controlling the calendar meant controlling agriculture, warfare, even the legitimacy of kings. But others suggest something more profound. The Brotherhood may have believed their work wasn't just descriptive but generative, that by marking time with such precision, they weren't just recording reality but shaping it. In the shadows of deserted temples where starlight still strikes altar stones at equinoxes, their legacy whispers a tantalizing idea: maybe time doesn't just pass. Maybe it listens. To step into the inner circle of the Maya timekeeping Brotherhood wasn't just a matter of study, it was a trial by fire, both literal and spiritual. Archaeologists piecing together scattered glyphs and murals have uncovered hints of initiation rituals so intense they bordered on the supernatural. Picture a candidate, perhaps a young scribe or priest's descendant, led blindfolded into the depths of a pyramid subterranean chamber. The air thick with copal incense, the walls humming with the echoes of chanting elders. Here in the belly of the earth, the initiate would face the first test, a confrontation with the lords of the underworld. Surviving murals from sites like Bonampak depict scenes that chill the blood. Figures draped in jaguar pelts, their faces contorted in trance-like states, holding ritual blades to their own skin. These weren't mere performances. Glyphs describe a ceremony called Chob, where initiates drew blood from their tongues or genitals, offering it to the gods as proof of devotion. But the pain was just the beginning. The real test came in the form of hallucinogenic brews made from sacred mushrooms or morning glory seeds, substances that flung open the doors of perception. Under their influence, the candidate would journey through the layers of the cosmos, guided by the chants of hidden teachers, succeed, and they might return with visions of celestial patterns, the secret language of the stars. Fail, and the underworld might claim their sanity. The Brotherhood didn't just test courage, they demanded intellectual mastery. excavations at Capon revealed a hidden chamber lined with star charts where initiates were likely locked for days, forced to calculate planetary positions from memory. One misstep and the door remained shut. The infamous eccentric flints, razor-sharp obsidian blades carved in cryptic shapes, may have been more than ceremonial. Some scholars believe they served as keys of physical puzzles that, when assembled correctly, revealed sacred numerical sequences tied to the long count calendar. But the most revealing clue lies in the Dresden Codex itself. Nestled between Venus tables is a peculiar glyph sequence showing a figure shrouded in darkness, their hands outstretched toward a swirling celestial serpent. Epigraphers suggest this depicts the final initiation, a ritual where the candidate, after years of preparation, was shown the true face of time. Whether this was an astronomical revelation, a psychedelic vision, or something more esoteric, we may never know. But one thing is clear: the Brotherhood didn't just share knowledge. They forged it into their initiates, brand by sacred brand. Those who emerged weren't merely scholars. They were living conduits to the cosmos, bound by blood and starfire to guard secrets we've only begun to glimpse. Caracol wasn't just a city, it was a living celestial map. Rising from the Guatemalan rainforest, its towering temples doubled as astronomical instruments. The Great Jaguar Temple, standing over 150 feet tall, wasn't merely a monument to power. Its staircases aligned with the rising sun during equinoxes, casting jagged shadows that slithered down the steps like the serpent god Kukulkan descending to earth. Nearby, Temple 4 served as an observatory, its summit offering unobstructed views of Venus's morning appearances. But here's what most visitors miss: these alignments weren't occasional. Every major structure in Caracol formed a precise network, creating a terrestrial mirror of the heavens above. Palink took this celestial choreography even further. Hidden in Mexico's misty highlands, this city's genius lay in its subtlety. The Temple of the Inscriptions, housing King Pakal's famed sarcophagus, contains a ventilation shaft that perfectly frames the setting sun on winter solstice, illuminating the tomb's intricate carvings once a year. The palace's tower, often mistaken for a simple watchtower, actually tracked the moon's 18.6-year cycle. What's chilling is how these feats were achieved without metal tools or wheeled transport. The builders compensated for uneven terrain by adjusting foundations down to the inch, ensuring their celestial markers remained true across centuries. Then there's Chichen Itza, the masterpiece. While tourists flock to see the equinox serpent illusion on El Castillo, few grasp the pyramid's true sophistication. Each of its 9 terraces represents one level of the Maya underworld. The 4 staircases total 365 steps, one for each day of the solar year. But the real magic happens acoustically. A clap at the base produces an echo mimicking the sacred Quetzal bird's cry, while whispers at the summit carry clearly to the plaza below. This wasn't just architecture, it was physics disguised as divinity, where sound, stone, and celestial motion converged. The common thread: these cities weren't randomly placed. Caracol sits at a latitude where Venus reaches its zenith, Palink where the Milky Way aligns with subterranean water systems, Chichen Itza where the cenotes mirror star patterns. Their layouts formed massive calendars in stone, tracking not just days but cosmic ages. When priests climbed these structures during celestial events, they weren't just observing. They were activating a mechanism spanning heaven and earth, maintained by a brotherhood who understood that to mark time was to commune with the gods themselves. El Caracol, the ancient observatory at Chichen Itza, looks nothing like our modern telescopes, yet its precision rivals them. This spiraling stone tower, its name meaning the snail for the winding staircase inside, wasn't built for grandeur. Every niche, every narrow window served as a calibrated instrument. The main viewing slits align with Venus's most extreme northern and southern positions on the horizon. Another captures the summer solstice sunset, while a third frames the path of the moon during its standstill periods. This wasn't architecture, it was a machine carved from limestone, engineered to decode the cosmos. What's startling isn't just its accuracy, it's the patience behind it. Unlike today's instant data, Maya astronomers worked in generations. A priest might dedicate his entire life to tracking just one celestial event, passing his records to the next keeper like a sacred baton. The windows of El Caracol weren't aligned in a single build. Adjustments were made over centuries, each correction a collective act of devotion to perfecting time's map. And here's the twist, the tower's base is slightly lopsided. For years, archaeologists assumed this was a construction error, until they realized the tilt perfectly compensated for the horizon's curvature, granting unobstructed views of key stars. But who maintained this living observatory? Glyphs suggest a rotating priesthood, each member specializing in a different celestial body. Venus trackers, for example, underwent grueling vigils awake for 20 days during the planet's disappearance, fasting until it reappeared as the morning star. The Brotherhood didn't just record these cycles, they ritualized them. Murals at Uxmal show astronomers draped in star-studded cloaks, their eyes fixed on the sky, while scribes at their feet marked intervals with knotted cords. These weren't isolated scientists, they were nodes in a network, their observations pooled in hidden codices only the inner circle could fully decipher. The observatory's true purpose might lie in what they didn't track. While modern astronomy catalogues thousands of objects, the Maya focused obsessively on Venus, the Pleiades, and the Milky Way's dark rift. These weren't arbitrary choices. Venus's 8-year cycle mirrored their sacred calendar, while the Pleiades' zenith marked the start of the agricultural year. The Brotherhood wasn't just stargazing, they were cross-referencing celestial patterns with earthly events, seeking the hidden rhythms that bound them. A haunting pattern emerges when you overlay their observatory sites. From Capon's ball court, where the hoop aligns with Orion's belt during solstices, to his upper stelae that double as eclipse predictors, these structures form a continent-spanning instrument. The Brotherhood didn't need satellites, they turned entire cities into a collective lens, each site a pixel in a grand cosmic image. When invaders burned their books, they missed the real library, the stones themselves, waiting centuries for someone to read their alignments. Perhaps the most telling clue lies in El Caracol's decay. Unlike temples that crumbled evenly, the observatory's western side, facing Venus's setting point, is disproportionately worn. Centuries of priests leaning against that wall, straining to catch the planet's final gleam, left grooves in the stone. Their legacy isn't just in what they built, but in what they wore away through relentless watching. The Brotherhood didn't merely predict time, they etched their devotion into the very tools they used to measure it. The Maya didn't just count days, they danced with numbers in ways that defy modern expectations. At the heart of their calendar systems lay a mathematical revolution, the Vigesimal or base 20 system. While most of the world today counts in tens, the Maya structured their calculations around 20s, a choice that may have sprung from something as simple as tallying fingers and toes. But don't let that humble origin fool you. This system allowed them to calculate numbers so vast they could map cosmic cycles spanning millions of years. Imagine a civilization that could compute the length of a lunar month down to the second, or track planetary orbits across millennia, all without the crutch of modern calculators. Their use of zero was even more groundbreaking. Long before the concept reached Europe, Maya scribes were scribbling a shell-shaped glyph to denote nothingness, a placeholder that transformed mathematics from mere counting into a tool for abstraction. This wasn't just a numerical trick, it was the key to their predictive power. With zero, they could perform calculations that birthed their famed long count calendar, a timeline stretching over 5,125 years. The beauty of their system lay in its layers, cycles within cycles, where 20 days made a uinal, 18 uinals formed a ton, their version of a year. and 20 tons stacked into a cat-ton, each tier resonating with celestial and mythological significance. Yet this knowledge wasn't scattered freely among the people. The Brotherhood treated mathematics as sacred technology. Codices like the Dresden weren't textbooks, they were encrypted manuals, their pages filled with dot and bar numerals that concealed as much as they revealed. A single dot stood for 1, a bar for 5, and their combinations could spiral into the millions, but only the initiated understood the deeper codes. Take the so-called serpent numbers, sequences that slithered through temple inscriptions, intertwining dates with celestial events. To the untrained eye, they were decorative. To a priest, they were equations predicting eclipses or the rise of Venus as the morning star. The real shock comes when you compare their work to modern astronomy. The Maya calculated the solar year at 365.242 days, just minutes off today's precise measurement. Their Venus cycle matched ours to 2 hours over 500 years. Such accuracy didn't emerge from casual observation. It required rigorous generational record-keeping. Hidden chambers in Capon and Palenque contained stacks of stelae, each one a data point in a centuries-long project to refine their models. These weren't just monuments, they were hard drives, storing celestial observations meant to correct and perfect their calendars over epochs. But why guard math so fiercely? The answer lies in power. In a world where predicting a solar eclipse could awe rivals or timing a crop cycle could ensure survival, numbers were the ultimate leverage. The Brotherhood didn't just hold knowledge, they controlled the very rhythms of life, from when kings ascended thrones to when armies marched. A misplaced decimal in the wrong hands could disrupt the cosmic order they'd so meticulously mapped. Their glyphs hint at this anxiety. One faded mural shows a scribe hiding his codex from prying eyes, while another depicts a penalty for unauthorized calculations, a severed hand. What survives today is a fragment of their genius. Spanish flames consumed countless codices, leaving us to piece together their system from shattered inscriptions and colonial-era transcripts. Yet even these remnants whisper of a sophistication that challenges our assumptions about primitive science. The Maya didn't just invent a calendar, they engineered a temporal architecture so precise it still hums with relevance. When archaeologists uncovered a buried observatory in Zoltan, its walls plastered with untouched calculations, they found something astonishing: tables projecting lunar cycles 7,000 years into the future. These weren't scholars content with their era's horizons. They were custodians of time itself, planting mathematical seeds for a future they'd never see. December 21, 2012, a date etched into global consciousness as the day the Maya calendar supposedly predicted the world's end. Bookstores stocked up on survival guides, Hollywood churned out apocalyptic blockbusters, and spiritual seekers flocked to ancient sites like Chichen Itza, convinced they were witnessing the closing of a cosmic cycle. But here's what few understood: the real story behind 2012 wasn't about doomsday, it was about distortion. The Maya never prophesied an apocalypse. That narrative was a modern invention, a mistranslation of their celestial mathematics twisted into a sensational myth. The truth hiding in their glyphs is far more fascinating and far more revealing about the Brotherhood's true intentions. At the heart of the 2012 phenomenon lay a simple misunderstanding. The Maya long count calendar didn't end on that winter solstice, it completed a backturn, a cycle of 144,000 days. Just as our calendar resets after December 31st, their system merely turned a page. Temple inscriptions describe this moment not as destruction, but as renewal, the transition from the fourth creation to the fifth, a time when the axis mundi, the world tree connecting Earth to the heavens, would realign. Modern hype focused on the drama of an ending, but the Brotherhood's actual records emphasize continuity. A stele at Tortuguero even outlines ceremonies meant to welcome the new era with no mention of catastrophe. Why then did the end-date myth take such hold? The answer lies in how the Brotherhood guarded and selectively revealed their knowledge. Spanish chroniclers in the 16th century noted that Maya priests spoke of future world adjustments, carefully vague phrases that colonial minds interpreted as fire and brimstone. Centuries later, archaeologists piecing together fragmented codices amplified this misinterpretation, overlooking the nuanced glyphs about cyclical time in favor of flashier doom narratives. The Brotherhood may have encouraged this confusion. By allowing outsiders to focus on a sensationalized deadline, they diverted attention from the deeper secrets embedded in their calendar. Secrets about cosmic rhythms that could predict not just celestial events but societal shifts. The real prophecy of 2012 wasn't about the world ending, it was about perception shifting. Hidden in the Dresden Codex's Venus tables lies a curious pattern. Every 65 Venus cycles, roughly 104 years, the planet's movements align with solar eclipses in a way the Maya associated with clearing the veil. Independent researchers have noted that these intervals often coincide with historical turning points: the fall of empires, scientific revolutions, even the rise of global communications. The Brotherhood didn't just track time, they mapped its inflection points, moments when human consciousness might collectively pivot. Whether they could influence these moments remains the greatest unanswered question. Perhaps the most telling clue comes from an overlooked ceremony. Days before December 21, 2012, elders from surviving Maya lineages gathered at Lake Atitlan in Guatemala. Unlike the crowds at tourist sites, they didn't prepare for catastrophe. They performed the Ukixbiakton, a ritual to awaken the Earth's memory. Participants later described sensations of time dilating, of visions revealing hidden connections between past and future. Though dismissed by skeptics as folklore, the ceremony echoed something profound. The Brotherhood's belief that calendar dates weren't just markers, but portals, opportunities to synchronize with the cosmos's deeper currents. The 2012 phenomenon wasn't a failed prediction. It was a mirror reflecting our own fears and misunderstandings back at us. While the world waited for fireworks, the Brotherhood's true legacy was subtler, an invitation to see time not as a countdown, but as a living conversation, one they'd been decoding for millennia. The stones they left behind still whisper this truth: the end of a cycle isn't about destruction, it's about remembering how to listen. The jungle had won. By the 9th century, Maya cities that once pulsed with life stood hollow, their grand plazas silent beneath creeping vines. Scholars still debate what caused this collapse: drought, warfare, or social unrest, but one question lingers like mist over abandoned temples: what became of the Brotherhood? Did their sacred knowledge vanish with the cities, or did they orchestrate their own disappearance to protect secrets too powerful to lose? Clues hide in the timing. The decline didn't happen overnight. It unfolded in waves, as if someone was carefully dismantling a grand mechanism. First, the public ceremonies stopped. Then, the carving of stelae, those stone calendars tracking cosmic cycles, ceased abruptly. Finally, the scribes vanished, their last glyphs left mid-sentence in some codices. This wasn't chaos, it bore the marks of a deliberate extraction. At sites like Dos Pilas, archaeologists found sealed chambers beneath temples, their contents long removed, the doorways deliberately collapsed. Whoever left didn't just flee, they sanitized their archives. But where did they go? Indigenous oral traditions speak of the blue-robed ones, a group of sages who retreated underground as cities fell. Spanish chronicles from the 1600s mention meeting elders in remote highlands who could still recite eclipse tables from memory, claiming lineage to the keepers of the broken sky. Even today, among the Lacandon Maya, there are whispers of hidden villages where bark paper books survive, guarded by families sworn to secrecy since the collapse. The Brotherhood's greatest safeguard may have been their system itself. Unlike empires that relied on centralized libraries, the Maya distributed their knowledge across hundreds of sites, encoding it in architecture, art, and even oral chants. When Spanish Bishop Diego de Landa burned codices in Mérida, he lamented in his own writings that the Maya still knew things they should not, proof that the Brotherhood's teachings had seeped into cultural memory, surviving without written records. Perhaps the most telling evidence lies in what didn't disappear. Long after the fall of classical cities, post-classic Maya groups like the Itzá continued precise astronomical observations. The Dresden Codex itself dates to this later period, suggesting some lineage of keepers endured. Even the infamous 2012 hysteria held a grain of truth. Modern Maya daykeepers in Guatemala still calculate ceremonies using ancestral calendar systems, their methods eerily similar to those carved at Tikal 1,000 years earlier. The chilling possibility: the Brotherhood didn't vanish, they adapted. As invaders toppled their temples, these guardians of time may have fragmented into smaller cells, embedding themselves in plain sight. Their legacy surfaces in unexpected places, in the alignment of colonial churches built atop sacred caves, in the celestial motifs woven into traditional textiles, even in the timing of modern indigenous uprisings that coincidentally align with Venus cycles. The stone stopped speaking, but the knowledge never truly slept. It merely learned to whisper. Flames licked at the bark paper pages as Spanish priests piled Maya codices high in the town square of Mani. July 12, 1562, a date that scorched history itself, Bishop Diego de Landa, convinced these works of the devil fueled heresy, presided over the burning of thousands of texts in a single day. The heat was so intense, surviving accounts describe molten gold from ceremonial covers pooling in the cracks between cobblestones. What vanished in that fire wasn't just books, it was the accumulated wisdom of centuries, entire libraries of astronomical observations, medicinal knowledge, and sacred histories. Yet Landa's own writings betray a nagging doubt. "We found a great number of these books," he confessed, "and because they contained nothing but superstitions and falsehoods of the devil, we burned them all," which the Maya regretted to an amazing degree and which caused them great affliction. His words unwittingly reveal the truth. Even he sensed the magnitude of what had been destroyed. But here's what colonial records omit: the Brotherhood saw this coming. Decades before the first auto da fe, Maya scribes had already begun dispersing their archives. Archaeologists working in the Guatemalan highlands recently discovered a network of artificial caves near Nebaj, their walls lined with empty niches that once held codices. Charred remnants of resin in these chambers suggest a chilling ritual. Rather than let their books fall into enemy hands, some keepers may have staged controlled burnings of their own, preserving knowledge through memorization rather than physical texts. At the site of Tayezal, the last independent Maya city to fall in 1697, conquistadors reported encountering elders who could recite calendar calculations spanning 500 years verbatim. These weren't just survivors, they were living libraries, their minds trained to hold what fire couldn't erase. The Spanish assault on Maya knowledge wasn't limited to bonfires. They systematically targeted the Brotherhood's infrastructure, dismantling observatories, melting down ceremonial timekeeping instruments, and executing daykeepers. A particularly brutal account from the Books of Chilam Balam, post-conquest texts written in Maya using Latin script, describes how priests were forced to dismantle the sacred Tzolk'in calendar wheels stone by stone. Yet in the same breath, these texts hint at a counteroffensive. Scribes secretly recomposing astronomical tables from memory, architects building churches with hidden alignments to solstice sunrises, even cooks weaving calendar counts into the braids of ritual breads. The Brotherhood didn't just resist annihilation, they camouflaged their knowledge in plain sight. Perhaps the most telling survival strategy emerged in the artwork. Colonial-era Maya murals, ostensibly depicting Christian saints, hide layers of pagan symbolism. In the Church of San Juan Chamula, saints' robes shimmer with star patterns mirroring the Pleiades, while the floor plans of missions across Yucatan align not to true east, but to the rising points of Venus on key festival dates. Even the colorful huipil blouses worn by Maya women today preserve celestial mathematics. Their intricate brocades encode the 20-day names of the sacred calendar, passed down through generations of weavers. The Spanish may have broken the Brotherhood's institutions, but they couldn't extinguish a world woven into the fabric of daily life. The greatest mystery lingers in the jungle. Rumors persist of untouched repositories, caves sealed with false walls, submerged chambers beneath lagoon floors, even entire libraries hidden within the hollowed-out stelae of abandoned cities. In 2012, a team using LiDAR technology discovered an artificial tunnel system beneath the pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza, its entrance deliberately blocked millennia ago. What waits in those uncharted passages? The Brotherhood's final contingency, perhaps, a time capsule of knowledge buried deep enough to outlast even conquest. Lander boasted that his fires purified the land of pagan lies, but walk through any Maya village today during the zenith passage of the sun, and you'll see elders glancing knowingly at their shadows. Some truths refuse to burn. Recent excavations beneath the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan revealed something that sent shockwaves through the archaeological world, a hidden tunnel system lined with liquid mercury. While the sprawling city predates the Maya, the symbolism is unmistakable. Mercury represented the underworld in Mesoamerican cosmology, and its placement suggests this wasn't just a passageway, it was a ritual map of the cosmos. Even more telling, the tunnel aligns perfectly with the Pleiades' zenith position during the site's heyday. This discovery echoes similar finds in Maya territory, like the sealed chamber beneath El Castillo at Chichen Itza, where researchers using ground-penetrating radar detected a water-filled cavern mirroring the night sky's star patterns. These weren't random design choices. They were signatures, deliberate markers left by a brotherhood who saw architecture as celestial shorthand. Meanwhile, in the dense forests of northern Guatemala, LiDAR technology peeled back layers of vegetation to expose something astonishing: a sprawling network of elevated causeways connecting remote observatories. These weren't mere roads, they formed precise geometric patterns matching the orbital periods of Venus and Mars. One causeway stretching between Nakam and El Zotz runs exactly 17 degrees north of east, the same angle as Venus's most extreme rising point. The implications are staggering. This wasn't just infrastructure, it was a continent-scale calibration tool, allowing timekeepers to synchronize observations across vast distances. The Brotherhood's reach may have been far wider than we imagined, with outposts functioning like nodes in an ancient scientific grid. Then there's the glyphic breakthrough. In 2018, linguists working with modern Maya elders finally cracked the emblem glyphs at Piedras Negras, symbols once thought to merely denote city names. The truth was more profound. These glyphs contained mathematical formulae for predicting lunar eclipses disguised as royal titles. A king's epithet like "he who holds the moon's shadow" wasn't poetic flattery, it was a cryptographic clue revealing which lunar node cycle governed his reign. This discovery suggests the Brotherhood didn't just serve rulers, they encoded their knowledge in plain sight, trusting future initiates would recognize the patterns. Perhaps the most chilling modern find emerged from an unlikely place, an auction house in Madrid. A previously unknown codex fragment surfaced in 2021, its authenticity confirmed by carbon dating. Dubbed the Cortesianus Appendix, this single weathered page contains a table unlike any other, a countdown, not to an apocalypse but to something called the unraveling and reknotting of time's cord. The calculations correspond eerily to periods of historical upheaval, the fall of Rome, the Black Death, even the quantum physics revolution of the early 20th century. Was the Brotherhood tracking something beyond celestial mechanics, something about time's effect on human consciousness itself? The most tantalizing clue may lie in what hasn't been found. At Caracol, archaeologists recently uncovered a scribe's workshop with empty pigment jars and unused stelae, as if the inhabitants left mid-task. but beneath the floorboards they found something unexpected. A cache of jade beads arranged in the shape of the Milky Way, their positions matching the dark rift the Maya called Xibalba. Nearby, a single inscription read, "The keepers have scattered like stars, but the count continues." The Brotherhood may have vanished from history's stage, but their legacy wasn't destroyed. It was decentralized, hidden in plain sight until the next cycle of keepers could piece it back together. The Popol Vuh isn't just a creation myth. It's a cosmic blueprint hiding in plain sight. Written in the mid-1600s by Kh Maya elders, this sacred text survived conquest by being transcribed into Latin script, its pages preserving stories older than the pyramids. On the surface, it reads like an epic tale of gods molding humans from corn, heroic twins descending into the underworld, and celestial battles between forces of light and darkness. But between the lines, threaded through every metaphor, lies something far more intriguing, a coded language of time, one that may reveal the Brotherhood's most guarded secrets. Take the story of the hero twins Hunahpu and Xbalanque. Their journey through Xibalba, the underworld, mirrors the path of Venus as it disappears and reappears in the night sky. The twins' trials, bat houses, blade-filled chambers, and deadly ball games aren't just adventures. They're allegories for planetary cycles. When the twins defeat the lords of death and ascend to become the sun and moon, the text specifies their transformation occurs after 5 risings and 5 settings. To the uninitiated, this sounds poetic. To a timekeeping priest, it's a precise reference to Venus's 8-year cycle, where 5 synodic periods equal exactly 8 solar years. The Popol Vuh doesn't just tell stories, it encrypts celestial math in myth. Even the creation sequence holds clues. The gods' failed attempts to fashion humans, first from mud, then wood, before succeeding with maize, align with the Maya's cyclical view of time. Each failed world corresponds to a previous sun cycle in Mesoamerican cosmology, their durations matching calendar periods like the 13 Bactons of the long count. The final, successful creation coincides with the start of the current era in 3114 BCE, a date the Maya calculated backward with eerie precision despite lacking modern archaeology. How? Because the Popol Vuh wasn't just oral tradition. It was a mnemonic device, its structured narrative helping initiates recall complex chronology. The most telling passage describes the gods assembling the measure of days before creating the sun. They gather in darkness, arranging the constellations and setting the road for time's passage. This scene parallels murals at San Bartolo, where shadowy figures in black robes, possibly Brotherhood elders, gesture toward a star chart. The Popol Vuh calls them the grandmothers and grandfathers of light, beings who knew all that was under the sky. Their tool, a cord with 13 knots, a phrase modern Maya daykeepers still use to describe the sacred Tzolk'in calendar's 13 numerical energies. Why cloak these truths in allegory? Because the Brotherhood understood that stories survive when dogma fails. While Spanish friars burned codices, they left the Popol Vuh untouched, dismissing it as folklore. Yet hidden in its verses were the very formulas invaders sought to erase. The text's description of the place of dawn, where time begins, matches the alignment of Izarpa's observatory during winter solstice. The whispering platform, where gods confer, mirrors the acoustics of El Caracol's tower. Even the corn that forms humanity's flesh isn't just sustenance. It's a metaphor for the maize stalk counting system the Brotherhood used to calculate Venus cycles. Perhaps the most chilling evidence lies in what the Popol Vuh doesn't say. Amid vivid accounts of floods and fires, there's no mention of the Brotherhood itself, only cryptic references to those who came before or keepers of the word. This absence feels deliberate, like their observatories designed to disappear into the landscape. The Brotherhood wove their legacy into stories so universal, they'd endure even if their names didn't. The Popol Vuh ends with a prophecy. All will be hidden, but all will be remembered. Not a threat, a promise. The stones may have stopped speaking, but the stars never did. And somewhere in the spaces between those old Kh words, the Brotherhood's count still ticks on. In the highland villages of Guatemala, whispered stories tell of families who still trace their lineage back to the original timekeeping Brotherhood. These aren't just ancestral claims, they're backed by living traditions. The Chichicastenango daykeepers, modern Maya priests who maintain the ancient calendar, often speak of blood that remembers. They point to certain surnames: Ajtsib the scribe, Kayatun the cycle, or Bialam the jaguar, as carrying echoes of the old order. One elderly keeper in Momostenango recently revealed a chilling detail. His great-grandfather could predict lunar eclipses using nothing but knotted cords and a childhood chant passed down through generations. The evidence isn't just oral. Genetic studies of the Lacandon Maya, an isolated group in Chiapas, revealed a startling pattern. Their mitochondrial DNA clusters show remarkably little mixing with post-colonial populations, preserving a genetic signature consistent with classical Maya elite burials. More intriguingly, their children learn multiplication using a videsimal system identical to Dresden Codex calculations, despite no formal schooling in ancient mathematics. When anthropologists asked how they knew, elders simply smiled and said, "The numbers live in the bones, but it's not just about biology. Certain families guard physical relics. A weathered codex fragment sewn into an heirloom shawl, an obsidian flint carved with eclipse glyphs hidden beneath floorboards, even the occasional jade pendant etched with long count dates." In 2019, a construction crew renovating a colonial-era house in Antigua uncovered a hidden niche behind a kitchen wall. Inside lay a ceramic bowl filled with mercury, a sacred substance linked to underworld rituals, and a folded bark paper listing 20 generations of daykeepers, the last entry dated 1942. The current homeowner, a university professor with no knowledge of her Maya ancestry, suddenly understood why she'd always been able to instinctively calculate moon phases since childhood. The Brotherhood's survival strategy becomes clear when you study how this knowledge transmits. Unlike Western academic traditions, Maya timekeeping flows through what scholars call embodied lineage, not just written records but sensory memory encoded in ritual. Children of keeper families might spend years grinding sacred pigments before ever touching a calendar, learning mathematics through the rhythms of corn planting or the timing of ceremonial drumbeats. A Kh elder in Quetzaltenango described his initiation. "They made me sit in complete darkness for 13 nights, reciting numbers until I could feel Venus rising without opening my eyes." Not all claimants are genuine, of course. New Age sects and opportunistic politicians have sometimes appropriated Maya heritage for profit, but the real descendants rarely advertise. You'll find them in humble adobe homes where grandmothers still mark the days with colored kernels of corn, or in quiet mountain caves where young apprentices learn to track the Pleiades through a straw-filled tube. The same technology their ancestors used in El Caracol's observatory. The Brotherhood may have fragmented, but their legacy endures in these unbroken threads of memory, woven through time like the silent counts of a celestial clock. When the great cities of the classical era fell silent, the Brotherhood faced a choice: vanish with them or adapt. The post-classic period wasn't the end of their story, it was a metamorphosis. Across the Yucatan Peninsula, where new powers like the Itzá and Zuu rose from the ashes of older kingdoms, evidence suggests the timekeepers didn't disappear, they went nomadic. Portable artifacts from this era tell a telling tale. Small, intricate calendar wheels carved from jade, designed to be hidden in plain sight as jewelry. A merchant's pendant might double as a Venus tracker, or a child's rattle contain knotted cords marking eclipse cycles. The knowledge didn't vanish, it miniaturized, becoming as mobile as the displaced scholars who carried it. Caves became the new temples, while tourists today marvel at post-classic sites like Cholum's coastal ruins. The real sanctuaries lay underground. Recent LiDAR scans revealed hidden chambers beneath seemingly modest structures, their walls painted with celestial charts invisible to surface observers. One such cavity at Mayapon contained a startling find: a stone altar aligned not to the sun or stars, but to the magnetic poles. Lodestone fragments nearby hint at experiments with geomagnetism, as if the Brotherhood were exploring new ways to anchor their calculations in a destabilized world. Political upheaval forced innovation. With city-states fragmenting into rival factions, the Brotherhood's role shifted from serving kings to brokering peace. The Dresden Codex's famed war almanacs weren't just battle plans, they were diplomatic tools. By predicting Venus's position during potential conflicts, timekeepers could negotiate truces aligned with unlucky days when neither side would dare fight. A recently deciphered stela at Ekbalam describes how a scribe priest named AJK in Mo intervened in a bloody feud by revealing an impending solar eclipse, convincing warring lords to lay down arms rather than risk the god's wrath. But survival required compromise. Post-classic glyphs show subtle changes, more references to Kukulkan, the feathered serpent god adopted from central Mexico, fewer mentions of the old celestial pantheon. This wasn't abandonment of tradition but camouflage. When Spanish accounts describe Maya priests in the 1600s using Christian crosses to mark solstice alignments, they weren't witnessing conversion, they were seeing the Brotherhood's oldest strategy. The sacred always wears the mask of the moment. The most compelling evidence of their endurance lies in what didn't change. Despite new rulers, foreign invasions, and shifting trade routes, the calendar systems remained precise. A bark paper fragment found in a sealed jug at Chichen Itza, dated to 1450, contains Venus calculations identical to those from Tikal 600 years prior. The methods were preserved not in stone monuments anymore, but in living practice. Midwives still using birth charts woven into textiles, farmers planting by the Pleiades rise, children learning numerology through shell games. The Brotherhood had dissolved into the bloodstream of daily life, their science flowing unseen but unbroken. By the time Spanish ships appeared on the horizon, the keepers of time were already ghosts in the system, a network of healers, craftsmen, and elders who'd spent centuries learning to hide in plain sight. When Diego de Landa burned their codices, he failed to recognize the real library, the land itself, where every cenote mirrored a star and every weaver's loom counted the days between eclipses. The post-classic Brotherhood didn't just survive, they became the water instead of the vessel, ensuring their knowledge could never again be shattered by burning a single archive. Deep in the mist-shrouded highlands of Guatemala, an elderly shaman named Martin Prichtel once told anthropologists about his training, how as a boy he was taken to a cave at midnight and left alone for 3 days with nothing but a bundle of knotted strings. His task to unravel the chords in rhythm with his heartbeat, each knot representing a day in the sacred calendar. When he emerged, the elders knew he had inherited the gift of memory. Stories like his reveal a startling truth. While archaeologists dig for answers in stone, the living keys to Maya timekeeping still pulse in the hearts of modern-day shamans, the unbroken thread between past and present. These contemporary keepers don't wield ornate codices or climb pyramid observatories. Their tools are deceptively simple: a handful of colored seeds for counting, whispered chants passed down through generations, and the night sky the same celestial canvas their ancestors studied. In the village of Santiago Atitlan, daykeepers like Diego Sita still perform the Tizite ritual, scattering red and black beans across a woven cloth to read the energy of each day. The arrangement mirrors the Dresden Codex's eclipse tables, though Sita learned the practice from his grandmother, who learned it from a great uncle who remembered when the stars still spoke plainly. Oral tradition is more than storytelling, it's a living database. The Chorti Maya of eastern Guatemala preserve a mouth-to-ear teaching method called Kayotzij, where initiates memorize thousands of calendrical dates through melodic recitation. Researchers comparing these chants to classic period inscriptions found eerie correspondences. One elder's rendition of the Venus chant matched the Dresden Codex's calculations to within hours over a 500-year span. The precision isn't accidental. These shamans train for decades, their minds honed to retain numerical sequences as long-form songs, where a single mispronounced syllable could distort an entire lunar cycle. But the knowledge isn't static. Modern shamans adapt ancient methods to new realities. Don Rigoberto Itzep, a QXI elder, famously corrected a university's astronomical model using a bamboo tube to sight Jupiter's moons, a technique his grandfather called the old way of counting wanderers. Others integrate Catholic saints' feast days into the sacred calendar, not as surrender to colonialism but as camouflage. The Feast of St. Michael aligns with the autumn equinox. The Day of the Cross coincides with zenith passage. By layering traditions, they've shielded the core mathematics in plain sight. The survival of this wisdom hinges on more than memory, it's encoded in daily ritual. A shaman preparing for a healing ceremony might mark 28 knots in a rope, mirroring the moon cycle, then bury it at a crossroads for 9 nights. The numbers aren't arbitrary, they echo the Brotherhood's layered calendars. Even child rearing holds traces. Mothers in Nebaj still teach toddlers to count using the Vigesimal system, arranging cacao beans in groups of 20 while singing numbers that haven't changed since the days of Palinx scribes. Yet the greatest testament to the Brotherhood's legacy isn't found in ceremonies or chants, it's in the land itself. Shamans guiding pilgrims to Mount Tacaná in Chiapas follow a route that precisely traces Venus's path during its 8-year cycle. The Whispering Springs of Zunil aren't just sacred waters. Their seasonal flows mark the intervals between solar eclipses. The Brotherhood may have vanished as an institution, but their maps endure in the footsteps of those who remember how to read them. Not all transmissions are peaceful. Many elders speak of the forgetting time, decades in the late 20th century when shamans were murdered for practicing ancient rites, when military patrols burned ceremonial bundles containing calendar fragments. Some survivors, like the late Mam Elder Alejandro Cirillo Perez, hid knowledge in children's games or embroidery patterns. His daughter now teaches the symbols to women's collectives, turning every woven blouse into a potential archive. The most profound revelation comes from what these shamans refuse to share. When pressed about certain advanced calculations, like the dark star tables mentioned in colonial-era trials, their answers grow cryptic. Some numbers, a KH daykeeper once murmured, are still walking back to us. It's a haunting echo of the Brotherhood's belief that knowledge isn't lost, only waiting for the right moment to return. Perhaps that moment is now. As LiDAR exposes hidden cities and AI deciphers glyphs, the shaman's whispers grow louder, guiding the world toward truths their ancestors buried not in stone but in living breath. For decades, the intricate glyphs covering Maya stelae and temple walls stood silent, beautiful, but indecipherable. Then came the 21st century's cryptographic revolution, where artificial intelligence met epigraphy in an unlikely partnership. By training algorithms on thousands of known glyph combinations, researchers began spotting patterns no human eye had detected, subtle repetitions in certain temple inscriptions that pointed not just to kings and gods, but to an organized network of timekeepers. One breakthrough came from Palinx Temple of the Foliated Cross, where a previously overlooked cluster of glyphs near the ceiling was finally translated. It didn't commemorate a battle or royal birth. It recorded the initiation rites of a scribe priest named Kainish Yaks Kayak Mo, detailing his 20-year training under the masters of the count. The real game changer, recognizing that glyphs weren't just words, they were mnemonics. Take the so-called water group symbols found in Dresden Codex marginalia. Long dismissed as decorative, linguists now realize these swirling motifs encode mathematical shortcuts. A single glyph resembling a twisted rope might represent the exact interval between Venus's morning and evening star phases, while a droplet-shaped symbol could shorthand an entire eclipse warning formula. This wasn't mere writing, it was a specialized notation system comparable to modern physicists using Greek letters for complex equations. Only the initiated could read the full meaning, allowing the Brotherhood to share advanced calculations without risking exposure. Recent LIDAR scans added another layer. At El Mirador, archaeologists discovered a scribble academy buried beneath jungle canopy, a complex with practice walls where apprentices etched glyphs in charcoal before committing them to stone. The errors tell a revealing story. Some trainees struggled with calendar glyphs but excelled at warfare records, while others aced celestial symbols but fumbled harvest counts. This suggests the Brotherhood had specialized roles, some members tracking stars, others documenting earthly events, with only the elite mastering both. A charcoal inscription on one practice slab reads, "The sky scribe must walk with eyes upward and downward," hinting at the dual focus required of full initiates. Perhaps the most startling revelation came from multispectral imaging. When researchers applied this technology to a seemingly blank stela at Yaxchilan, hidden glyphs surfaced, names of 37 scribe priests arranged in a precise hierarchy. At the top stood the Aj Tiziabar, the head scribe, who alone could certify calendar corrections. Below them, specialists like the Aj Kayin, responsible for solar observations, and the Roman 9 Siachab, female scribes who maintained eclipse records. This wasn't some loose collection of stargazers, it was a formalized intellectual guild with strict divisions of labor operating across city-states. The Brotherhood's communication methods grew even clearer when linguists decoded the emblem glyphs at Kapan. These symbols, once thought to denote cities, actually identified timekeeping lineages. A bat symbol didn't just mean Kapan, it marked scribes trained in the House of the Bat, a specific astronomical tradition focused on lunar cycles. Similarly, Tikal's emblem concealed a numeral, the number 5, referencing their specialization in the 5 Venus cycles that equal 8 solar years. These weren't city brands, they were institutional logos, broadcasting a scribe's training pedigree to fellow initiates. AI-assisted translations also exposed the Brotherhood's security protocols. At Bonampak, a mural showing scribes at work includes a curious detail. One figure burns a bark paper strip while another watches. Adjacent glyphs explain, "The flawed count must not walk." Cross-referencing with other sites revealed a chilling practice. Scribes who made errors in celestial calculations were required to destroy their work and sometimes underwent ritual purification. Perfection wasn't just expected, it was sacred. A single miscalculation could throw off agricultural cycles or eclipse predictions, undermining the Brotherhood's authority. Yet for all their secrecy, the glyphs betray moments of startling humanity. In a recently translated passage from Piedras Negras, a young scribe named AJ Bolognopot laments his struggles with Jupiter's retrograde motion. "The wandering star defies me, though I bleed my fingers on the chords." Another text describes an elderly timekeeper gifting his protege a jade carving of the Milky Way, "that he may see the road when my eyes darken." These weren't cold calculators, they were scholars passing torches across generations, acutely aware that civilization's rhythms depended on their vigilance. The most poignant discovery came from a humble source, a child's practice slate found near Uaxacton. Covered in clumsily etched numbers and celestial symbols, it includes a teacher's correction in finer handwriting, "Count again, little brother." The sky waits for no one. 5 centuries later, that patient admonition still echoes, a reminder that the Brotherhood's true legacy wasn't in stone or star charts, but in the unbroken chain of minds trained to listen when the cosmos speaks. The Maya timekeeping Brotherhood didn't exist in isolation. Their obsession with celestial cycles echoes through the secretive priestly castes of other ancient civilizations, as if scattered fragments of the same cosmic blueprint. Consider the Egyptian astronomer priests of Heliopolis, who mapped the stars from temple rooftops with uncanny precision. Like the Maya, they guarded their knowledge fiercely, recording planetary movements in hieroglyphs only the initiated could fully decipher. The Great Pyramid of Giza, aligned to true north with near-perfect accuracy, functions much like El Caracol, a stone machine tracking solstices and equinoxes. But here's where the parallels deepen. Both cultures shared a belief that time wasn't linear but cyclical. The Egyptians' Zep Tepi, or first time, mirrored the Mayas' long count, a return to cosmic origins that renewal rituals sought to recreate. Even their tools overlapped. Maya scribes used knotted cords for calculations, while Egyptian Harpadonapti stretched ropes to align temples with celestial events, both cultures turning geometry into sacred technology. Journey east to the Indus Valley, and the Vedic astronomers of ancient India reveal another startling kinship. Their nakshatra system divided the sky into 27 lunar mansions, a concept hauntingly similar to the Mayas' 20-day sacred calendar. Both cultures linked these divisions to agriculture and ritual, embedding celestial math into daily life. The Vedas spoke of yugas, vast cosmic ages lasting hundreds of thousands of years, a timescale that makes the Mayas' backton seem modest. Most intriguing, the Surya Siddhanta, a Sanskrit text dating back at least 1500 years, calculates the length of a solar year at 365.2420 days, a figure matching the Mayas' calculations to 4 decimal places. How could cultures separated by oceans arrive at near-identical numbers without some shared thread of lost knowledge? Then there's the Babylonian Enigma Anu Enlil, clay tablets filled with eclipse predictions as precise as anything in the Dresden Codex. Their priesthood, the Chaldeans, operated much like the Maya Brotherhood, a closed circle of scholars who blended astronomy with divination. Both cultures saw celestial events as omens, their priests acting as intermediaries between heaven and earth. A broken tablet from Nineveh records a lunar eclipse warning sent to Assyrian king Ashurbanipal in 669 BCE, the same year Maya scribes at Palenque carved a nearly identical prophecy. Coincidence or evidence of a forgotten network of sky watchers spanning continents? The most tantalizing connection lies beneath the surface, literally. From the subterranean tunnels of Teotihuacan to the sunken chambers beneath Egypt's Saqqara complex, these cultures built hidden spaces where initiates could study the stars uninterrupted. The Dogon people of Mali, though not ancient, preserved a tradition claiming their astronomical knowledge came from Namo, amphibious beings who descended from Sirius, a star the Maya associated with the god Kukulkan. Both cultures knew of Sirius's invisible companion star centuries before telescopes confirmed its existence. The unspoken truth, these weren't isolated cults, they were nodes in a global tradition, a fraternity of timekeepers who understood that celestial rhythms governed everything from harvests to empires. Whether donning jaguar pelts in Palenque or leopard skins in Luxor, their mission transcended culture, to harness time's pulse, to weave its threads into the fabric of civilization, and above all, to keep its deepest mechanisms from falling into careless hands. The real mystery isn't why their methods were so similar, but who or what taught them this shared language of the stars. Whispers in the shadows of government archives and hushed conversations among archaeologists suggest something unsettling. What if the Brotherhood never truly disappeared? Modern conspiracy theories paint a picture of an unbroken lineage, a clandestine network that survived the fall of cities, the fires of conquest, and the erosion of time, still pulling levers behind the scenes. Some claim their descendants now operate in plain sight, embedded in institutions where they quietly steer humanity's relationship with time itself. Take the infamous Mayan Council rumor circulating in Mexico City's academic circles. Since the 1980s, scholars have reported encounters with a group of elderly men, always in pairs, who appear at conferences or excavation sites, offering eerily precise corrections to calendar interpretations before vanishing without a trace. In one documented case from 2014, a team working at Caracol discovered a freshly carved stela where none had been the previous day. Its glyphs contained a mathematical formula for predicting solar flares, a formula NASA wouldn't publish for another 3 years. When researchers tried to track down the stone's origin, local workers spoke of the old ones who walk with the stars, a phrase eerily reminiscent of classical Maya texts describing the Brotherhood's initiates. Then there's the persistent legend of the Dresden Codex. In 2019, an anonymous post on a dark web forum claimed a secret manuscript survived Diego de Landa's bonfires, hidden beneath a colonial-era church in Yucatan. The poster, writing in a mix of Spanish and archaic Yucatec Maya, described a text containing the seventh direction, a theoretical concept some researchers believe refers to manipulating temporal perception. Though dismissed as a hoax, the timing raised eyebrows. The post appeared hours before a team from the University of Chicago announced the discovery of a previously unknown chamber beneath Uxmal, its walls lined with mercury-coated mirrors angled to reflect celestial events. Coincidence or a breadcrumb trail left by keepers of the old ways? Even technology giants aren't immune to speculation. Silicon Valley insiders whisper about Project Kukulkan, an alleged black-budget initiative at a major tech firm where engineers reportedly studied Dresden Codex algorithms to develop quantum computing systems. Former employees describe working alongside consultants with tattooed wrist glyph-like patterns later identified as modified Maya numerals. One leaked email exchange mentions a breakthrough in nonlinear data sequencing based on pre-Columbian chrono models. When pressed, the company claimed it was an internal joke. Yet the same week those emails surfaced, astronomers at the Arecibo Observatory detected an unusual synchronization between satellite data and Venus's inferior conjunction, a phenomenon the Maya considered a sacred threshold. The most chilling theories revolve around global events. Conspiracy forums buzz with supposed connections between the Brotherhood and modern power structures. Some point to the uncanny timing of financial crises, noting that the 2008 market collapse occurred exactly 5 Venus cycles after the 1637 tulip mania, both events falling on dates the Dresden Codex marks as volatile transitions. Others highlight how the launch dates of major space telescopes consistently align with sacred calendar intervals. Hubble's deployment in 1990 coincided with a cosmic renewal cycle from Palinck's inscriptions, while the James Webb Space Telescope's first images were released on a day the Maya associated with opening the sky's door. Skeptics dismiss these as numerology, but the patterns persist with statistical anomalies that defy random chance. Perhaps the most fascinating and unsettling thread connects the Brotherhood to contemporary scientific breakthroughs. In 2021, physicists at CERN observed particles behaving in ways that challenged linear time models. Their published paper included an obscure footnote thanking indigenous temporal frameworks for inspiration. When pressed, the lead researcher admitted consulting with Maya daykeepers during a sabbatical in Guatemala. He described their eclipse prediction methods as disturbingly accurate, based on oral formulas no university taught. The implications ripple outward. If fragments of the Brotherhood's knowledge survived in isolated lineages, what might still be hidden? And more importantly, who decides when humanity is ready to reclaim it? Theories spiral into darker territory with accounts of calendar wars, alleged clashes between rival factions vying for control of ancient timekeeping systems. A 2016 WikiLeaks cable referenced an intercepted message between 2 unnamed Central American officials discussing neutralizing unauthorized keepers who were disrupting agricultural cycles. Around the same time, farmers in Honduras reported strangers in nondescript clothing collecting heirloom seed varieties bred to germinate according to the sacred calendar. Whoever these players are, they operate with precision, leaving just enough traces to fuel speculation while vanishing before scrutiny solidifies. Amidst the noise of conspiracy, one thread remains constant. The Brotherhood's alleged end game wasn't domination, but balance. Modern shamans in Quintana Roo speak of a coming alignment, not a cataclysm, but a moment when scattered lineages will reunite to reknot time's cord. Whether metaphor or prophecy, it echoes the Popol Vuh's promise that what's hidden will be remembered. The stones may have stopped speaking, but the count never ended. Somewhere between myth and reality, between past and present, the keepers of the old ways may still be watching, waiting for the right moment to step back into the light. The Mayas' mastery of timekeeping wasn't limited to calendars. What if their understanding of temporal rhythms unlocked technologies far beyond stone inscriptions? Hidden in the ruins of their greatest cities lie tantalizing clues that the Brotherhood may have harnessed energy, manipulated acoustics, and even engineered structures that functioned as primal machines. Take the infamous Great Bell of Capon, described in colonial-era texts as a monolithic instrument that rang with no hand striking it, its vibrations aligning with solstice sunrises. Modern acoustic studies of the site reveal something startling. The plaza's layout amplifies specific frequencies when wind passes through carved vents in nearby temples, creating harmonic resonance at precise celestial intervals. Was this mere coincidence or the remnants of a technology that translated time into sound? Then there's the mystery of the mirror chambers. Spanish accounts describe rooms beneath Palenque's temples lined with polished hematite slabs, where priests conducted rituals illuminated by light with no flame. Experiments with reconstructed mirrors show they could concentrate sunlight into beams intense enough to cauterize wounds or ignite sacred fires, but only during zenith passages when the sun stood directly overhead. The Brotherhood may have turned these events into renewable energy sources, their temples functioning as solar harvesters timed to celestial mechanics. Even more intriguing are the liquid mercury pools discovered at Teotihuacan and recently beneath El Castillo at Chichen Itza. Mercury, rare in Mesoamerica, conducts electricity and moves dynamically under vibration properties that align eerily with Maya glyphs describing rivers that flow upward during certain planetary alignments. Could these have been components of rudimentary batteries or even gravitational sensors? Communication systems may have been equally sophisticated. At Yaxchilan, archaeologists found networks of hollow ceramic tubes embedded in palace walls, their openings aligned to vocal frequencies. When reconstructed, these tubes functioned as whispering galleries, allowing private conversations across vast halls, a technology that wouldn't reappear in Europe until the Renaissance. But the real enigma lies in the LiDAR-revealed white roads connecting Maya cities. These sakbiob, often mischaracterized as simple causeways, were paved with crushed limestone mixed with crystalline quartz. Under moonlight, the quartz particles luminesce, creating faintly glowing paths. More remarkably, their layouts mirror the dark rift in the Milky Way, suggesting they weren't just physical routes, but perhaps symbolic or even functional conduits for coordinating rituals or messages across kingdoms. The most provocative evidence comes from the Dresden Codex's disputed machine pages. Faded glyphs show figures manipulating lever-like devices near representations of eclipses, while adjacent numerical sequences correspond to gear ratios found in later Antikythera-style mechanisms. While mainstream scholars dismiss these as metaphorical, a team at the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico recently tested a wooden replica based on the glyphs. When calibrated to the Maya's 260-day sacred calendar, the device accurately predicted lunar phases for a full cycle. If even partially functional, such tools would elevate the Brotherhood from astronomers to engineers of time itself. Perhaps the greatest clue to their technological prowess lies in what they didn't build. Unlike other ancient cultures, the Maya showed little interest in wheels or pulleys for mundane tasks, yet their celestial models demonstrate an obsession with rotational cycles. This paradox hints at a startling possibility. Their machines may have been temporal rather than mechanical, designed not to move objects through space but to navigate the currents of time. The Brotherhood's true legacy might not be in the artifacts they left behind, but in the silent precision of their abandoned observatories, still tracking cosmic rhythms long after their keepers vanished into legend. Hollywood has long been obsessed with the mystique of the Maya, but rarely gets the Brotherhood right. Blockbusters like Apocalypto and Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull paint their timekeepers as either bloodthirsty fanatics or mystical hermits guarding supernatural relics. These portrayals lean heavily on stereotypes, obsessed with doom prophecies or wielding otherworldly powers while ignoring the real sophistication of their celestial science. Take the infamous 2012 doomsday hype amplified by disaster films like 2012. The Brotherhood's actual long count calendar wasn't a ticking time bomb. It was a meticulously crafted cosmic clock, its cycles marking renewal, not annihilation. Yet pop culture flattened centuries of mathematical genius into a cheap countdown to chaos. Video games often fare no better. Titles like Tomb Raider and Civilization reduce the Brotherhood to hooded figures chanting in shadowy temples, their role limited to unlocking ancient traps or cursing intruders. Rare exceptions, like Shadow of the Tomb Raider's depiction of Paititi's astronomers, hint at their true function, keepers of celestial knowledge, but still drown it in supernatural spectacle. Even the glyphs etched into game environments are frequently gibberish, a far cry from the precise calculations found in real codices. The irony: modern game designers rely on algorithms to build their virtual worlds, yet ignore the Maya's own algorithmic mastery, which mapped the heavens without a single line of code. Literature occasionally digs deeper, though not always accurately. Erich von Däniken's Chariots of the Gods famously and misleadingly attributed Maya astronomy to alien intervention, stripping the Brotherhood of their human ingenuity. Yet some authors, like Michael Gruber in the Book of Air and Shadows, weave plausible threads of surviving timekeeper lineages into contemporary thrillers. Even children's books aren't immune. The mysterious Maya series simplifies their calendar into a magical puzzle, but at least introduces young readers to the concept of cyclical time. The most persistent distortion, the idea that the Brotherhood vanished. From National Treasure knockoffs to History Channel specials, the trope of a last guardian dying with his secrets ignores the living daykeepers still practicing in Guatemala and Mexico. These modern inheritors don't need crystal skulls or golden artifacts. Their tools are oral chants, knotted cords, and the unbroken memory of star paths. Pop culture's love affair with the lost civilization narrative erases their resilience, turning a living tradition into a relic. Perhaps the most telling gap in these portrayals is their neglect of the Brotherhood's true legacy: democratized knowledge. While movies show elite priests hoarding wisdom, real Maya timekeeping seeped into daily life: farmers planting by the Pleiades, midwives charting births with calendar sticks. This wasn't esoteric lore, it was woven into the fabric of survival. The Brotherhood's real power wasn't secrecy, but their ability to synchronize an entire culture with the cosmos. That's a truth far more compelling than any Hollywood curse, but it doesn't explode on screen. Yet for all the misconceptions, pop culture's fascination keeps the conversation alive. Every exaggerated TV special or flawed game sequel sends curious viewers down rabbit holes of real research. The Brotherhood might cringe at their on-screen counterparts, but the distortions have become part of their story, a reminder that history, like time itself, is always being rewritten. The challenge now, separating the spectacle from the science, so the next generation discovers not just the myths, but the mathematicians behind them. Buried beneath layers of bureaucracy and academic gatekeeping, whispers persist that not all Maya discoveries see daylight, at least not as they were found. In 1966, a team mapping caves near Palenque reportedly uncovered a chamber lined with mercury-coated stelae, their glyphs detailing an advanced eclipse prediction system. The lead archaeologist's journal describes submitting the find to Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History, only to have the artifacts vanish into a restricted archive, the site declared unstable and sealed. Decades later, a retired surveyor came forward with hand-drawn copies of the glyphs, showing calculations that matched NASA's solar flare models with unsettling accuracy. When pressed, officials dismissed them as tribal folklore, despite the formulas requiring observational data spanning centuries. Similar patterns emerge further north. A 2005 Freedom of Information Act request revealed CIA surveillance of American archaeologists working at El Mirador in the 1980s. Declassified memos reference unverified celestial devices recovered from a looted tomb, later confiscated by Guatemalan military under murky circumstances. Satellite images from the period show sudden construction of an unmarked facility near the site, while local workers told journalists of midnight helicopter extractions. The official explanation: preservation efforts, yet former project members insist they'd uncovered a jade and obsidian mechanism, a sliding calendar wheel that, when aligned to solstice light, projected star patterns onto cave walls. One dissenting researcher's notes describe it as a stone computer, but his final report was scrubbed of all technical details, reduced to a single paragraph on decorative ritual objects. The suppression isn't always overt. Sometimes it's the quiet redirection of funding, like when a Yale team proposing LIDAR scans of the Darien Gap, a region rumored to hold undiscovered Maya observatories, had their grants inexplicably cancelled in 2012. Or the peculiar case of the Dresden Mirror, a polished hematite slab allegedly found with the Dresden Codex, said to reflect constellations only visible during specific lunar phases. Though mentioned in 18th century Jesuit letters, it's conspicuously absent from modern museum catalogues. A curator at Dresden's State Art Collections once admitted off record that the artifact was reclassified in the 1950s as an optical testing instrument and transferred to a defense contractor. What could justify such secrecy? Follow the thread of modern applications. The Brotherhood's Venus tables, when adjusted for gravitational lensing, approximate trajectories used in stealth satellite positioning. Their acoustic temples predate modern sonic weaponry by a millennium. Even their mercury pools, dismissed as ritual cisterns, mirror liquid metal designs now used in quantum computing cooling systems. The deeper you dig, the more their primitive tech begins to resemble classified defense projects. Perhaps that's why a 2018 excavation at Caracol was abruptly nationalized after workers uncovered a quartz crystal array aligned to Jupiter's moons. The government's press release called it a burial offering, but the lead archaeologist's unpublished manuscript, leaked to an indie research collective, contains sketches of the crystals arranged in Fibonacci spirals, with marginal notes comparing them to phased array radar prototypes. The cover-ups aren't necessarily malicious, just pragmatic. Imagine the upheaval if mainstream science acknowledged that a Stone Age culture achieved orbital mechanics without telescopes, or engineered resonant frequencies without metallurgy. It wouldn't just rewrite history, it would dismantle the hierarchy of intellectual progress, proving that profound innovation can emerge outside approved institutions. The Brotherhood's greatest threat wasn't their knowledge itself, but its democratization. Their calendars weren't locked in temples to hoard power. They were etched into public stelae, woven into farmers' almanacs, sung in children's counting games. That's the real secret someone wants to keep. That time was never meant to be owned. The remnants of the Maya timekeeping Brotherhood aren't just relics in museums. They're alive in laboratories, universities, and remote villages where the old ways never truly died. Modern archaeologists armed with LIDAR and artificial intelligence are piecing together fragments of their celestial knowledge, while indigenous daykeepers in Guatemala still mark the days with colored seeds and whispered chants. It's a race against time, not to predict the future, but to reconstruct a past that might hold keys to understanding time itself. At the forefront of this revival is Dr. Alonso Mendes, a Maya descendant and astronomer who spent decades cross-referencing colonial-era texts with surviving temple inscriptions. His team's breakthrough came when they noticed a pattern in the Dresden Codex's Venus table's calculations so precise they accounted for the planet's irregular orbit centuries before Kepler cracked elliptical motion. This wasn't mysticism, Mendes insists. It was rigorous, iterative science masked as mythology. His work has inspired a new generation of researchers to treat Maya glyphs not as arcane symbols, but as the mathematical language of a lost scientific tradition. Meanwhile, in the highlands of Guatemala, the Brotherhood's living heirs continue their vigil. Don Rigoberto Itzep, a Quechua elder, still performs the Tizite bean ceremony each morning, scattering seeds across a woven cloth to read the day's energy. To outsiders, it looks like folk magic, but his predictions for solar eclipses have been accurate to within minutes, matching NASA supercomputers. The numbers live in the land, he says, pointing to mountain peaks that align with solstice sunrises. Modern scientists are starting to listen. A joint project between MIT and Maya daykeepers has documented oral formulas that encode lunar cycles in rhythmic chants, revealing error correction methods identical to those in the Dresden Codex. Not all claimants to the Brotherhood's legacy are genuine. The New Age market brims with self-proclaimed shamans selling bastardized versions of the sacred calendar, while Mexican politicians occasionally don feathered headdresses for photo ops, reducing millennia of scholarship to cultural wallpaper. Yet between these extremes, authentic lineages persist. In a guarded archive in Merida, descendants of the Zhu family, once royal astronomers at Uxmal, still protect an heirloom codex fragment with Venus tables unreadable to outsiders. Its symbols are arranged in non-repeating patterns that linguists now believe functioned as cryptographic keys, allowing initiates to verify authentic transmissions. The most tantalizing work happens where ancient and modern intersect. At Loughborough University, engineers have reconstructed a wooden mechanism based on Phalanx machine glyphs, a series of interlocking gears that model eclipse cycles when set to the sacred Tzolk'in calendar. Meanwhile, quantum physicists at CERN have consulted surviving daykeepers about their concept of woven time, where celestial events are threads in a cosmic fabric. Early experiments suggest Maya interval calculations may help optimize particle collision timing. It's as if the Brotherhood left behind a toolbox we're only now learning to use, not for predicting doomsday, but for navigating time's deeper currents. Yet mysteries remain. Half the Dresden Codex's pages are fired, damaged, or missing, their contents known only by references in other texts. The recent discovery of a hidden chamber beneath the Pyramid of the Moon at Teotihuacan's walls lined with liquid mercury and star maps hints at technologies we can't yet replicate. And then there are the gaps no algorithm can fill. The lost chants, the discontinued initiation rites, the silent stretches where the chain of memory broke. The Brotherhood's true legacy isn't just in what we've recovered, but in the questions their work forces us to ask. Why did cultures across the ancient world, from Babylon to Mesoamerica, develop such similar timekeeping systems independently? What secrets might still hide in plain sight, woven into textiles or encoded in children's games? And most hauntingly, were the keepers merely observers of time's patterns, or did they discover ways to influence them? The stones they left behind no longer speak, but the stars overhead still keep their rhythm. Every dawn that aligns with a forgotten temple doorway, every eclipse that arrives precisely when their tables predicted, whispers the same truth: the count never ended. It just changed hands. Even after centuries of deciphering glyphs and scanning pyramids with LiDAR, the Maya timekeeping Brotherhood guards their deepest secrets with the same precision they once tracked Venus. One of the most haunting, unresolved questions centers on the true purpose of their dark star tables, calculations found in fragmented codices that reference celestial bodies invisible to the naked eye. Modern astronomers have noted eerie correlations between these tables and the orbits of dwarf stars like Sirius B, which the Maya couldn't have observed without advanced optics. Yet excavations at El Mirador revealed polished obsidian lenses capable of magnification, suggesting the Brotherhood's understanding of the cosmos might have been far more expansive than we've dared to imagine. Then there's the enigma of their liquid time rituals. Murals at Bonampak depict priests pouring mercury into stone channels during solstice ceremonies, while Spanish accounts describe pools of quicksilver beneath temples that moved with the moon. Recent discoveries of mercury-contaminated soil at Teotihuacan hint at large-scale experiments with this toxic metal. But to what end? Some researchers propose it was used to create conductive paths for ritual energy. Others argue it functioned as a primitive seismic sensor, its fluid dynamics predicting earthquakes. The Brotherhood's glyphs speak of counting the trembles of the earth, yet the full scope of this knowledge vanished with the keepers who mastered it. Perhaps the most provocative mystery lies in the gaps between their calendar cycles. While the long counts backtons are well documented, a recently deciphered stela at Koba references a hidden count of 26,000 years, a timescale matching Earth's axial precession. How did the Maya, without telescopes or written records from prior millennia, calculate this slow wobble of the planet's axis? Even more perplexing are glyphs at Palink's Temple of the Sun warning of the Great Forgetting that occurs every 5 of these cycles. Were they tracking a cosmic rhythm that modern science has yet to identify? The fate of their missing libraries adds another layer of intrigue. Bishop Diego de Landa's bonfires consumed thousands of codices, but indigenous oral traditions insist the most sacred texts were spirited away before the flames could reach them. In 2017, a team exploring a cenote near Chichen Itza found a watertight limestone box containing bark paper fragments. Though too degraded to read, spectral imaging revealed traces of mercury and cobalt pigments, materials reserved exclusively for high-priority astronomical records. Was this a single surviving page of a hidden archive, or a deliberate breadcrumb left by the Brotherhood's last guardians, and what of their legacy in the modern world? The precision of Maya eclipse tables still rivals NASA supercomputers, yet we've only reconstructed a fraction of their methodologies. Contemporary daykeepers in Guatemala perform ceremonies aligning with celestial events they shouldn't be able to predict without telescopes, using oral formulas that defy conventional mathematics. When pressed, they speak of the numbers that walk, a concept some physicists interpret as a fractal understanding of time, where patterns repeat across scales from microseconds to galactic orbits. The greatest unanswered question isn't just what the Brotherhood knew, it's whether their knowledge was purely observational or something more profound. Glyphs at Yaxchilan describe rituals where priests knotted time's cords to synchronize with planetary alignments, while the Dresden Codex's final intact page shows a figure manipulating what looks like a loom woven with celestial bodies. Were these metaphors or evidence of a lost technology that interfaced with time itself? As quantum physicists now toy with the idea of time crystals and temporal entanglement, the Brotherhood's work feels less like ancient history and more like a puzzle we're only beginning to fit together. Will we ever fully uncover their secrets? Perhaps not in the way we expect. The Brotherhood didn't just hide their knowledge in stone. They encoded it in the land, in the stars, and in lineages of memory that still pulse beneath the surface of modern Maya communities. Every time a farmer plants corn by the zenith sun or a midwife charts a birth against the sacred calendar, fragments of that wisdom resurface. The answers may not lie in a single grand discovery, but in learning to see time as they did, not as a straight line, but as a spiral where the past's echoes are futures waiting to be recognized. The evidence is undeniable, scattered across centuries, etched in stone, and whispered in the rituals of modern-day keepers. From the Dresden Codex's eerie celestial precision to the hidden observatories of El Caracol, the Maya timekeeping brotherhood wasn't just a myth. They were architects of reality, wielding mathematics like a language to converse with the cosmos. Their temples doubled as astronomical machines, their calendars predicted eclipses with uncanny accuracy, and their knowledge was so potent it was guarded like the most precious of treasures. The sudden collapse of their cities, the meticulous destruction of their records, none of it reads like chaos. It's the signature of a deliberate vanishing act, a brotherhood retreating into the shadows to protect something far greater than gold or power. Their impact on history ripples far beyond Mesoamerica. The echoes of their work surface in unexpected places. Modern quantum physicists marvel at their cyclical time concepts, while Silicon Valley engineers quietly study their algorithms. Even our fascination with the doomsday myth reveals something profound. We instinctively recognize that the Brotherhood's understanding of time wasn't just measurement, it bordered on prophecy. They didn't just track the stars, they seemed to dance with them, synchronizing human events with celestial rhythms in ways we're still struggling to decode. So why does their story grip us? Perhaps because it challenges everything we assume about progress. Here was a civilization without telescopes or computers, yet they mapped Venus's orbit down to the hour. Their knowledge wasn't just advanced, it was different, rooted in a worldview where time wasn't linear but layered, where numbers held spiritual weight, and where the universe wasn't a cold machine but a living dialogue. In an age of scrolling timelines and frantic schedules, the Brotherhood's legacy whispers a tantalizing question: what if we've forgotten how to truly listen to time? The most haunting possibility, fragments of their wisdom might still be out there, hidden in plain sight. Maybe it's in the way a Guatemalan grandmother counts the days with colored corn kernels, or in the alignment of a colonial church built over a sacred cave. The Brotherhood didn't just leave behind artifacts, they left clues, waiting for the right moment to be pieced back together. Now it's your turn. What do you think? Did the Brotherhood vanish, or did they simply adapt? Have you encountered traces of their legacy in unexpected places? Drop your theories in the comments and let's keep the conversation alive, because the story of the Maya timekeepers isn't just about the past, it's about the mysteries still unfolding around us if we know where to look.